Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237 as we get to the next to last film in my Vincent Price marathon. And it is the sequel film, Dr. Phibes Rises Again, 1972, which was released roughly 13 or 14 months after The Abominable Dr. Phibes, the cult classic, which was my last review. So be sure to check that out as well. Now, the original Phibes film, I really enjoyed. It was definitely surreal, imaginative, different, great revenge story, unique deaths, and it had a good ending. Um, wasn't quite sure where it was gonna go after that. Obviously these two together, I knew there was a sequel, but with the way that ended, I was like, okay, well, as far as he knows, his revenge had been fulfilled. He's fulfilled. He put himself in the sarcophagus with his wife, drained his blood, replaced it with embalming fluid. He's done. But as the opening to this film describes, with the sarcophagus, it's done in such a way that when the moon does a certain thing and lines up, which hasn't happened in like 2,000 years, it will create a process that will bring him back. And not really quite sure what to say about this. I mean, I enjoyed it fine, but it almost just makes me think, like, was this one just successful enough that they wanted to rush right into this? Because, you know, making the moon line up with the sarcophagus, and then the creation of his rival in this almost kind of feels like a desperate attempt to keep the story going. But even then, I mean, it plays off. It plays out fine. It is in the same. Actually, let me read about the production on this. Should have done that first. Da, 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 da. Doesn't really say anything about, people really wanting to. They weren't going to bring Volnavia back, his mute helper, but she was portrayed by Virginia North in the first film, and she was pregnant at the time of this one, so they got Valley Kemp to cast her in the cast instead. Desert Scenes was shot in Spain, and for the previous film, there's Peter Jeffrey, John Carter, Caroline Munro in their same roles. Don't remember Caroline Munro, but Peter Jeffrey and John Carter were the inspectors or detectives or whatever on Phibes' case in the previous film. And Hugh Griffith and Terry Thomas are in new ones. Now, Terry Thomas, I know, was the doctor with the film that he was watching and had his blood drained by Dr. Phibes. But anyway, 3 years have passed, and the moon does its thing. He awakens, and he finds out that his mansion has been demolished, wrecked, in ruin, and a safe that has, a map to this river of life in Egypt has gone missing. And there's only one person he knows that would want such a map, and it is his. How did I do here? I really gotta learn how to use this fucking thing. some sort of rival by the name of Beak. I wasn't going to try to say it first. Played by Robert Quarry, who's been in a number of films, horror films. I think that's what he's known for. I recognize him from Madhouse, also of Vincent Price. I've reviewed that. Who, I mean, Phibes talks about him like they're longtime rivals, but no mention of him in the first film. That's what I mean. Just kind of feels like they're really trying to continue the story. But he's this guy who, if you're a Batman fan like I am, kind of like Ra's al Ghul. He's lived for centuries, but instead of, a pool like the Lazarus Pit with Ra's al Ghul, it's some special elixir that he has that prolongs his life. And the world is now short of it, so he has to find the river of life to keep living on forever. Where Phibes wants to find it to resurrect his wife, Victoria, and give themselves eternal life. This film's rated PG, whereas the original, it says PG-13. They must have reevaluated it or something, because I could have swore PG-13 didn't come in until like the late 80s. And according to this, Corey was also the star of Count Yorga, Vampire, and Count Yorga, Vampire, and The Return of Count Yorga. I haven't seen those. I haven't heard of them. Excuse me. Yeah. It's not Corona, but I've had a cough for a while. Even on the poster for Rises, again, it says Peter Cushing, but Peter Cushing is literally in like the tiniest cameo appearance as the captain of the ship, because Phibes and Volnavia, they pack up Victoria in a sarcophagus and his mechanical band from the previous film, because they have to bring those on the ship to Egypt, which Beak and his wife are on. And I do like this part of the story where you have two people, or two groups of people, trying to find a certain thing, but Beak wants it for himself, Phibes wants it for himself, but more so for his wife. Trying to find this miracle, I guess. And like the original, Beak brings a crew with him. Like the original, Phibes kills them off in creative ways. In the last film, it was, each death was a take on the 10 biblical plagues. This one doesn't really have a set theme except for something that is Egypt related. Like one guy is pecked to death by a hawk. Another guy is stuck where he is because it's like something's impaling his arms so he can't move. And scorpions are all over him and he's stung to death. This other guy gets crushed. And kind of a race to see who can get to that river first, because there's even gates and shit. One thing I did find amusing is when Phibes gets to this temple. I mean, it looks like a temple, but as the film goes on, the inside of it looks like his Art Deco mansion. All he brought with him was the sarcophagus with his wife, his assistant Volnavia, and a mechanical band. Yet, the inside of the temple is completely renovated with futuristic Art Deco. Don't know where he got the shit to do that. Of course, you also have the hell were their names again? Peter Jeffrey and John Cater as Superintendent Waverly, that's John Cater, and Inspector Trout, Peter Jeffrey. They're still in it, and they get on the case because even before they get on the ship, Phibes and Volnavia, they go to Beaterbeck's house and they kill his manservant. They put something up against his ear, and it like shoots out his other ear. Pretty cool. They notice it's a strange death, and they just associate Phibes with it. And the character they're talking to is Terry Thomas, who was the doctor that had his blood taken out in the first film. And like the first film, because it's still a comedy, not nearly as funny as the first one, but it's still like a dark horror comedy. But in this one, the the comedy is really limited to those guys. Like, in my review for the first film, I said the funniest parts were the scenes with them and like the guy that made the amulets for Phibes. So he reminded me of John Cleese, and it's just full of a British humor. Being a Monty Python fan, I picked up on that and thought it was funny. This film really, the humorous scenes were the ones with them. The inspectors on his case. Just that dry British humor. But yeah, I didn't really, I mean, I liked it. I wouldn't say boring, but I did find myself, answering comments, reading about stuff while I'm watching it. It didn't grab me as much as the original did. And then, of course, at the ending, similar to the first one, Phibes pretty much wins. Because, he tricks a Beaterbeck. Because he has Beaterbeck's wife in like a trap. And there's this exchange of how, give me the key to the gates, to the river. And I don't know, I was kind of drifted in and out at that point. Probably isn't a fair review, but try to bear with me. Watched a lot of Vincent Price films lately. But by the end of the film, Phibes, Volnavia, they have the sarcophagus with his wife Victoria. They're through the gates of the River of Life. He's rowing down. He's singing Over the Rainbow. And Beaterbeck is stuck outside the gate, pleading to go with him. His wife tells him, it's not the end of the world, don't worry about it. But then we see through almost, what the hell are they called? Sort of similar to, like, fade cuts, I think is what you would call it. Like a Universal Wolfman movies, always sort of like the jump cuts, I guess, where he's aging rapidly. His age is catching up to him, and we get the idea he's probably going to die there. Which, oh yeah, and he hides Victoria's body, and there's like a secret compartment of this one Egyptian sarcophagus. I've always called them tomb. I thought a sarcophagus was more, like I always thought the sarcophagus was more just like the big square thing, like a mausoleum. I guess it's anything that holds the body, but Egyptian ones I always called tombs. There's one with the secret compartment. It has the key to the gates, and that's where he puts Victoria. Which anyone that goes into an Egyptian temple out in the desert goes inside and sees this futuristic art deco temple. They probably know Phibes is there. I don't know. It's late as hell. I'm tired. I don't. I'm trying to keep up with videos. Just time hasn't been working with me lately. The cast. I do have to give it to Vincent Price though. I always do, because this is a very visual performance that he has to give. Because remember, for the last film, the only way he can speak is if he has that thing hooked up to his neck with some sort of speaker, and even then, it's, I guess, telepathic. It just, think of what he says and it comes out. He doesn't have to move his lips or anything. So he's giving a very, which one, his voice acting is fine, as always. But this is more of a visual performance. It's all body language and facial expressions. Which even then, he can't really give too many facial expressions because, supposed to believe it's all latex, it's all appliances to cover up, him being burned and charred. Which I'll say the makeup looks just as good as the first film. The woman that played Volnavia, I will say, even though she didn't really do as much in this film as the last one, Valley Kemp, I thought she was, I thought she was more beautiful than the last one. Not that that matters, but because she some camera angles of her kind of she reminded me of Grace Slick, one of my favorite female singers of all time, of a Jefferson Airplane. She kind of reminded me of Grace a little bit. And yeah, so the movie came out, it got mixed reviews. I mean, mostly positive. I think is mostly liked by fans from the first film. Of all sequels that I think are pointless and didn't really need to be made, I would say this is one of them. But of all those, this one's probably the best because they found a way to make it work. Like, I would say this is well, no, I can't say that. I was gonna say like The Collector and The Collection, but The Collector had a sequel bait ending. Phibes didn't. Even if this movie was never made, I think it would have been a fine, conclusive, one and done story with just this film. But never gonna argue with getting another Vincent Price film. And I know this review's kind of been all over the place, talking about random shit, not really going into the plot very much, but there's not really a whole lot to say. It's mostly kind of the same thing, just a lot of the finer notes have been tuned. Like, this one isn't revenge like this one is. The deaths aren't based on plagues like this one is. They changed some of that shit. But I don't know. It's always great to see Vincent Price, so there's that, but not quite as good as the original. Just like this review probably isn't as good as my review for this one. I'll live with that. But anyway, also, I checked tonight. I am 5 subscribers away from 300, so thank you all very much. Share my channel on social media, whatever, because once I get 5 more, I'll be able to do another Q&A for the last 100 that joined since my last one. And those are always really fun to do. I really enjoy those. So, so spread the channel like Corona, I guess, in this time of quarantine. Have people binge watch it. But anyway, that is my review for Dr. Phibes Rises Again, 1972. I have one more Price film but I've already started my Hitchcock marathon. So I have one more Price film, Hitchcock films, and some assorted random ones that I've got recently. But that's that, so thank you for watching.